Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, December 2nd. Larry Johnson is here with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Yeah, I thought it was just November. Man, time is flying by.
Yeah. Larry, as we talk right now, Israel is attacking Lebanon again. What's going on? Washington is talking about that the ceasefire still is in place. But what type of ceasefire is that, in your opinion?
No, it's only temporary. In fact, I think Hezbollah is starting to fight back now. They said this was all. Um, this actually is part, I think, of a broader plan. They want to get the ceasefire, but this is to allow Israel to target Syria, and targeting Syria in tandem with the United States, the United Kingdom, Turkey. This really was a coordinated attack on Syria. The West wants to see if they can destroy Syria because they want to weaken Iran. And I think Iran and Russia have both awakened to the threat and are rushing to aid Syria and to turn back this offensive. And yeah, I think when the dust of this all settles, I don't know, it'll be maybe by the end of December. You're going to find Erdogan as the victim. He'll have suffered the worst casualties out of this in terms of, maybe not physical losses, but loss to his prestige. His efforts to turn Assad into a pariah, I think, are going to boomerang and make him a pariah. Right now he's begging Russia, oh, help me. I got the oil prices, because of the sanctions on Gazprom, they've gone up, help me. Russia's in a convenient position to say, hey, go pound sand. Go get oil from your buddies in the United States and Israel. Good luck with that. But I think Putin will be much smarter than that. They'll use that as leverage over Erdogan. He's really, I think, of all the leaders in the world, if you wanted to pick the most despicable, the most loathsome, the biggest scoundrel, it would be Erdogan of Turkey. He is a disgusting human being. He is a terrible leader. And he almost makes Joe Biden look competent.
Yeah. Larry, with what's going on right now in Syria, you've mentioned Erdogan and the role of Turkey in what's going on in Syria. But at the end of the day, in your opinion, is this group so-called HTC, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
Yeah.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So that,
who are these people, Larry?
well, they're really sort of, let's call them descendants of ISIS. This they are a Sunni Salafist group. So this is sort of a particular flavor of Islam, a very radical one, in which these people, they take it upon themselves that they have got the ultimate truth from God, that they are God's messengers, they are God's judges, they are the ones who deliver the judgment of Allah on all unbelievers. And usually that involves killing them. So that's the mentality these guys come out of. They have been a replacement for ISIS and al-Nusra. They are, I think, they're less focused on a global caliphate as opposed to imposing this caliphate in Syria. But they are definitely, they see the Syrian, the Syrian establishment are a variety and an offshoot of Shia Islam, the Alawites. But the Alawite practice, at least under Bashar al-Assad, has been to protect and preserve all religions, the Sunni, the Shia, the Alawite, the Christians, even the Jews. Bashar's father was not nearly as so generous, and let's acknowledge that. But HTS has been funded by the United States indirectly through Turkey, trained reportedly by U.S. trainers, or at least elements of it trained. It's received training from Great Britain, from the Turks. It's these fighters are sporting new uniforms and equipment and material. It clearly came from NATO supplies. And they feature pictures of both Erdogan as sort of their hero. So they're actually acting as a proxy for Turkey right now, and Turkey has sold its soul to the West on this particular case. Why? Ultimately, I think they've had some promises made that if they help get rid of Bashar al-Assad, an oil pipeline that will stretch from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, will then pass through Syria, which will be under the control, the West hopes, of a government favorable to the West. Then that pipeline will go through Turkey, and Turkey will get the benefit of pumping all that oil to whoever needs it. So, of course, Turkey jumped on this as its chance to be a player. I think that's one of the elements driving it. Not the only one, but that's one element.
We had China condemning what's going on in Syria. Russia and Iran are helping the government in Syria fighting these people.
Yeah.
But what would be the result of this fight between the government in Syria and Russia and Iran on one side, and these HTS, and I don't know what's the full name of this.
Hayat, Hay apostrophe A-T. Hayat Tahrir, Tahrir, Tahrir al-Sham.
Yeah.
Al-Sham is, I guess, an Arabic word for the Levant.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Yeah. If these people, do you think that Turkey would continue supporting them with what we've seen so far?
Okay, I don't think you're hearing me properly. This isn't just Turkey. This is the United States. This is the United Kingdom. This is an extension of the war in Ukraine. This is an extension of the attempt to start a coup in Georgia, a new Maidan. This is not narrow. This isn't about Syria. This is about a much broader effort by the United States to hang on to its power, to control and dictate who gets to be in control here. Understand, there are also Ukrainian soldiers in Syria side by side with the HTS fighters. They've been training them. They've helped arm them. How do you think they got there? It's not via. This is the United States and Great Britain helping foment this and carry this out. And it's being coordinated also with Israel. This is the West in its full-blown corruption, in my view. So don't get fixated on that this is somehow something internal just to Syria. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is bigger than that, Nima. This is about trying to take out, to defeat Russia and defeat Iran. The problem the West has now is, you go back 10 years, actually it was 12 years ago when all of this really started in its fury in 2012. And at that time, the Arab League with, Jordan and Egypt, they booted Syria. You're out. We don't want to be around you. You're bad. Now the Arab League has welcomed Syria back in. And just 2 days ago, the Arab League announced, we stand with Syria. The global South has awakened to the fact that the United States and Europe are colonial powers bent on raping them. They have no interest in peaceful coexistence and treating them as equals. Their goal is to rape the rest of the world, take everything that they can from them without any regard for the populations. And people better damn well wake up and realize that that's what's going on. The global South that sucks up to the United States and sucks up to the United Kingdom are surrendering themselves. They might as well be prostitutes in a whorehouse. So this is a very complex, there's the only ideological consistency is on the side of Russia, Syria, Iran. You've got the Shia groups in Iraq as well coming to the aid of Syria. And as you pointed out, yeah, China has condemned it. China conducts annual exercises with Iran. They have a definite vested interest in seeing Syria stay alive and independent. I said, this is going to hurt Turkey the most. Turkey, I think Erdogan has made a very stupid decision by deciding to allow this offensive to be launched at this time, because it was directly coordinated with the ceasefire that was supposed to go into place in Lebanon. And now Israel's in the process of violating that, and I think you're going to see the Hezbollah attacks step up. And we're still, Iran has not backed away from its vow that it's going to hit Israel again in retaliation for the attacks on October 1st. Now 2 months ago. So we'll see.
Let me ask again, Larry, you believe that Turkey is just playing its role under the thumb of the Washington right now, of Washington? Or is Washington forcing Turkey to play this way?
No, it's not, again, recognize I said, Turkey's been promised some things. Hey, you cooperate with us on this, you're going to get to be the #1 oil distributor in the Middle East. That pipeline will come right through you, all the oil, because they have to come to you to get the oil. So I think they've been bought off. So, the United States, Turkey is doing this for what Erdogan believes is in Turkey's interest. And he's stupid enough to believe promises offered by the West. And this isn't the first time he's betrayed Vladimir Putin. Turkey entered in some agreements at Astana. They're now violated those agreements. I don't see the Russians forgetting this or forgiving this time. So they've got a variety of ways they can hurt Turkey and make Turkey suffer without going for an open confrontation. And I think Erdogan has just now ruined his influence. They won't give him the time of day at BRICS.
The ceasefire in Syria was in 2020, Larry. A ceasefire agreement between the government and these people, HTC, and there were other factions as well.
HTS.
Yeah, HTS. Sorry for that.
Yeah,
and there are other factions as well, Larry.
That's there's just not one. There are multiple factions. They still fight. They fight. It's like, who's the real Muslim? I've seen this kind of thing actually within what I'll call some Christian eschatological sects, where you get these small, they're really tiny groups of believers that convince that, hey, we are the true church of Jesus Christ. Jesus has we're the restoration church. We're the restoration branch. Then you got another little group over here. No, we're the restoration branch. We're the true believer. So they're all vying to prove who's the real one that's got the right connection with God. That's what's going on with this group of crazy Sunnis. Each one is we've got the direct line to Allah. We know what Allah's will is, and we're going to enforce it. And so they end up killing other Muslims. And there was a great commentary 3 or 4 days ago by Abdi Aludinov, a Russian Chechen Muslim military commander, and he's like, basically he says, hey, anybody who's out there telling you that they're Muslim and that the only way that they can serve God is by killing other Muslims, he says, they're speaking the words of the devil. That's the Antichrist. That's not Allah. That's the opposite of Allah. That's the devil. And I think, we put this into, theological terms, but I think Abdi Aludinov was exactly right. You got to judge these people by what they do, the fruits of their work. Are they bringing life, or are they bringing death? And that's where, you know, I think we talked about this a little bit on Friday. One of the hallmarks of what is happening out of the BRICS movement is that Russia and China are not busy going out trying to use force to compel other member countries to do what they want. They're treating them as equals. They're treating them as respected equals. And the people, those other countries, they understand that they're not being patronized. They understand that they're getting treated with respect. I guarantee you, Erdogan's not getting treated with respect by the United States. Are you kidding? The Europeans look upon the Turks as, you know, these are slaves who belong in the sand. You know, there's a very derogatory term that it's the N-word, and they combine the sand. It's used in the West to describe these kinds of people. Turks, they're not European. Ugh. They're not as bright. They're not as brilliant. They don't smell as nice. You know, that's sort of how the attitude is. And yet these Turks allow themselves to be played like a bunch of chumps. And here's Erdogan going along with this. And understand, this didn't just start, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago. Remember back in 2012 when the CIA had its base in Benghazi, Libya, and was collecting weapons in Libya, sending them to Turkey, to the Turks, who were then giving those weapons that had been collected out of Libya to these radical Islamist terrorists that were at the time trying to defeat Bashar al-Assad. Turkey was fully on board with that. And actually at the time had much broader support. He had the support of the Arab League. He doesn't now. He's now on the outs with the Arab League, in particular with what they're trying to do to Syria. That's why I said this situation has changed. So, yeah, you know, there's the military situation, I think, will become clearer by, you know, the end of the week, end of next week.
Larry, there were two agreements in 2020 between the Syrian government and these Syrian rebels. And on the other hand, we had an agreement between Iran, Russia, and Turkey about demilitarized zones, which we're talking about Aleppo and Idlib, yeah, these two cities. And right now, Iranian foreign minister is in Turkey talking with Turks. What's going on in your opinion if Turkey has decided to violate that agreement without informing, without sending any sort of sign to Russia and Iran?
Yeah, that's why they're talking.
What would be the reaction from these two countries to Turkey? Because at the end of the day, they have to understand.
Well,
At the time of this attack, Larry, it was unbelievable when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to the attack on Lebanon, and right now in Syria.
Well, you're asking what would be their reaction, but you've already seen their reaction. Their reaction is twofold. It's both diplomatic and it's military. On the diplomatic front, both Sergei Lavrov and the Iranian foreign minister, I forget his name, have been to Turkey to see Fidan, who is their foreign minister. Now, is Fidan clued in? Is he actually a confidant of Erdogan? Has he been privy to these plans, or has he been kept in the dark? I don't know. That's part of, I think, what Lavrov and the Iranians are trying to find out, number one. But they haven't sat around and waited. Russia's responded immediately with great force, attacking these forces that are basically supplied and maybe in some cases commanded by Turkish officers. So the Russians would be happy to kill the Turks. So they're doing that. Iran's sending forces in as well, and has sent a new commander. I forget the commander's name, but he was a deputy to Soleimani.
Qafari. Yeah.
Qafari?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's reportedly a very tough character.
Yeah, he is.
So they're going, they didn't sit around and wait to respond. And now the sort of the wild card in this is this ultimately, there was everybody had. It's not to say they all had the same interest or goal. The goal of the United States and Brit is to weaken Russia and ultimately weaken Iran by taking out Syria. So that's their goal. The goal of Israel, they'll get involved with this too because they want to weaken Syria and prevent Iran from rearming Hezbollah. So they want to try to weaken Hezbollah because they intend to go back and try to wipe Hezbollah out at the end of 60 days of that ceasefire. And hopefully the folks at Hezbollah are not foolish enough to believe that they could actually have a peace deal with Israel. It's not going to happen. There is no good faith deal that can be had with these Zionists, in my view. I think it's impossible. And then Turkey wants to secure as much land as it can in Syria, and in part of securing that land have basically a pathway that oil pipeline from Qatar can come through, and they can reap the financial benefits. Greed, man, money, follow the money. So this is not about ideology. I mean, we're presented with this lie. Oh, these Muslims, they're pursuing a global caliphate. Yeah, that's true. And therefore, we, the righteous crusaders of the West, need to rise up and defeat that caliphate. Except, what are we doing? Oh, we're arming the caliphate so that they can fight against these other Muslims that we say we don't like. We don't like the Shia, and we don't like the Alawites. So we'll back these Muslims against those Muslims for now. And then when it becomes they're no longer useful to us, well, we'll wipe them out too. Yeah, people don't understand how this game's being played.
Larry, if you were to compare the situation before 2020, in those days that we had some sort of fight in Syria, and right now, when, as you've mentioned, Russia right now is fighting Ukraine, and the collective West together.
Yeah.
And
beating them.
Yeah. If you were to compare the situation of Iran, Russia, and Syria, I'm talking about Syria, before and after 2020, before 2020 and right now in 2024, how do you see which one is more critical in your opinion? It was before 2020 or right now?
Oh, right now is, right now is for all the money. Right now, NATO is desperately trying not to lose in Ukraine, and they're going to lose. They have no path to victory. Let's say, well, what if they use nuclear weapons to attack Russia? They'll be destroyed. So when I say a path to victory, is there a path that they can go forward where they will secure their interests and have peace? The answer is no. Does Russia have a path to victory? Absolutely. Because Russia will militarily defeat not just Ukraine, but will have defeated NATO. And you keep hearing some of these people talk that, oh, Russia can never face up to NATO. Bunk. Yeah, I mean, the reason NATO keeps expanding is it needs the additional forces because it can't supply the forces that are needed. Size of the U.S. Army has shrunk. Size of the British Army has shrunk. Size of the French Army has shrunk over the years. And in shrinking, their actual capabilities to fight are diminished. None of the armies in these countries have been involved in a winning war since World War II. So let's be clear. 80 years, they've been pretending to be something that they are not, a competent military. And the United States is now, not capable of sustaining any kind of combat over a month. If it has to go more than a month now, the United States would be exhausted. We don't have the ability to fight anymore. If we're going up against a bunch of villagers that are herding goats and carry AKs, We can fight them for 18 years and still not win. But by God, we can beat up on the kids in wheelchairs. We're pretty good at that.
Larry, Jake Sullivan is talking about that the Biden administration is putting Ukraine in the best possible position right now before leaving Washington. What are they trying to do with Ukraine and how they can change the battlefield?
There is a prank that's carried out in the United States, sometimes on Halloween, sometimes on other occasions. So kids will take a paper bag. They'll fill it with dog excrement, dog poop. Tie off the top of the bag. Then they'll put it out in front of somebody's front door. They'll set it on fire. And then they want the person to come out and stomp out the fire. And in stomping out the fire, oh man, poop is flying. That's what the Biden administration's doing, okay? They're preparing a big paper bag of poop, setting it on fire, and leaving it in front of Donald Trump's door and hope that he comes out and stomps all over it and fouls himself with excrement. That's what's going on. Nothing bigger or broader, or no bigger plan than that. That's all they can do. Try to create chaos for Donald Trump.
How about Donald Trump himself? Is he making some sort of problem for himself?
You know, I think Trump's been so fixated on defeating the deep state at home. And in the back of his mind, he thinks that he can go back out and do what he did in 2017, 2018, 2019 to try to negotiate with these countries. But, he's got, let's call it convenient memory loss. He actually made relations with Russia worse when he was president, not better. He provided some lethal aid to Ukraine. And he walked away from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty that would have controlled intermediate range ballistic missiles. And now Russia is far, far stronger. Putin's in a far stronger position than he was 5 years ago when Trump was last in office. So Trump's in for a rude awakening. If he thinks he can bully Putin, threaten Putin, Putin just laughs at him. He's a buffoon if he thinks that. And really the same thing applies in the Middle East. He was counting a lot on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He sent his son-in-law Jared Kushner over and thought they had this Abraham Accord worked out. And, they really put the screws to the Palestinians. Yep, that's dead. So far, Saudi Arabia has continued to insist, nope, there's no defense agreement, mutual defense pact, no agreement whatsoever until there's a homeland for the Palestinians that is protected and under international law.
How did you find Donald Trump picking Keith Kellogg to be his envoy to the conflict in Ukraine? Do you think, because the way that he's talking about the conflict, he says that if the Biden administration sends more weapons to Ukraine, that would put Donald Trump in a better position to talk with Russians or maybe negotiate with Russians. That's the same way that the Biden administration is thinking of.
Yeah.
How we can draw a line between them.
Well, understand that this peace proposal or the so-called peace plan that's been attributed to Kellogg was actually written by Fred Fleitz. Fleitz is a former CIA officer. I didn't know Fleitz when I was there, but Fleitz was a hardcore neocon, hardcore, and by virtue of being a hardcore neocon, he was all over encouraging the war in Iraq back in 2003. So you think a guy like that is going to be writing anything sane and rational that will be that the Russians would possibly accept? No. So Kellogg is a nice old man, honorably served his country in Vietnam and didn't learn a damn thing from it. So Kellogg is he's not an experienced hand in Russia. He doesn't appear to be a student of history. You don't necessarily have to be a Russian expert. At least read some history and understand, why Russia will do what it does.
Larry, I don't know if you saw Donald Trump's interview with Fox News in 2020, in which he said that he wanted to assassinate Bashar al-Assad. And one of his people just avoided him to do that. Right now, do you think if it comes to power, he goes after some sort of assassinations together with Israelis?
Well, have assassinations ever worked to change the policy of a government and put it on where it's more amenable to the United States? We tried that in Vietnam. Didn't work well there for us. We ended up losing that. We murdered Diem, or the Vietnamese, South Vietnamese murdered Diem, but with our encouragement or our saying, well, we don't care if you do whatever you do is on you. I would hope, that Trump got elected because he was a peace president. And there were people that were counting on him to promote peace. If he rejects that and turns away from that and goes the way of war, he'll destroy his presidency. It's that simple. This is not complicated.
But the problem is I don't see these people who are going to work with him have anything to do with what we've heard from him.
No,
so
you're
far.
right. You're right. Yeah. Well, for the most part. The only possible, it depends on the issue. So if it's Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi basically understands that, we can't keep doing what we're doing to Russia. We need to find an agreement and an accommodation with them. But with respect to Israel, everybody is still they're locked into the Zionist, this notion that this land was given to Israel by this holy covenant with God, this Old Testament covenant, that it belongs to Israel, even though they didn't live there for 2,000 years. It belongs to all these Jews from Ukraine and Poland and New York and Miami Beach. It belongs to them, as opposed to all those people who'd actually been living, the Arabs who'd been living there for the last 2,000 years. You don't count. And so, you got all these people that have bought into this Zionist nonsense. And, we can get into that as a fuller discussion at some point if you're interested. But I maintain the entire premise that there's this magical being called God who loves the Jews more than he loves everybody else. They're his very, very special people. And that because they're his special people, he allows them to kill others so that they can have land that nobody else is allowed to have. Yeah, I call that a fairy tale. That was a story written by Jews, for Jews, during their Babylonian captivity, and it's been handed down over the years. And a lot of Christians have bought into it. And, and watch the attacks. You'll watch me, I will be attacked for saying this, but I think it's a magical, foolish story. And we need to stop it, to stop pretending that we can, if everybody really believes that they are made, that human beings are made in the image of God, if you believe in God, and you believe that human beings are made in the image of God, whether you are a Muslim, Christian, or Jew, then that means every human being has value in God's eyes. And you better have a damn good reason before you start killing one of them. And that's been the problem with the West. As long as you're brown or poor and live in some other country, we don't mind killing you. It's no big deal. How many million in Vietnam? Almost 1 million in Iraq? 500,000 in Syria? I mean, the body counts start piling up. And I'm personally, I'm tired of it. I reject it. I think it's an evil policy. It has not brought peace and justice to the world. those end up being words used to excuse inhuman conduct. That we need a change. And yes, I see what Russia and China are doing as representing an alternative. And the West does its best to demonize them as, authoritarian empirical powers trying to recapture their empire. They're the two countries that don't have 700 military bases around the world. That's the United States. Own it. Great Britain has more military bases overseas than either Russia or China combined. So we need to stop with this lie and recognize that the one who's doing all the killing is us, not them.
Larry, do you see, with what we've seen so far in the West Asia, the conflict in Gaza, then to Lebanon, between Israel and Iran, and right now in Syria, where are we going, in your opinion? And at the same time, the conflict in Ukraine, are we heading toward world war? Because when you look at the picture, it's we can find two sides of this conflict. They're the same.
Well, what do you mean heading towards world war? Dude, we're there. We're there. We're in a world war. This hasn't been formally announced, but that's where we are. Right now you've got probably over 1 million Ukrainians dead. Is that not enough for everybody? You got probably growing close to 80, 90,000 Russians dead, with 300,000, 400,000 wounded. So they've suffered a number of casualties as well. They've got the advantage. They're 4 times, 5 times the size of Ukraine. So they've got more than enough population to handle that kind of sacrifice. Look at the number of people, 45,000 plus in Gaza, dead civilians. We're in a world war. It's just the countries that are the targets of the West have yet to organize themselves in a way to retaliate en masse and to bring the attack home. The United States has been enjoying this luxury since the War of 1812. The United States has not been attacked by a foreign power on its country where actually its citizens have had to die fending off foreigners since the Brits burned Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. Remember, that war started largely because, it's not taught much in U.S. history because we decided we wanted to invade Canada and take over Canada.
Yeah. Larry, do you think that Donald Trump would bring, at the end of the day, you've mentioned a lot of difficulty that he's going to face in terms of his administration, in terms of his policies, and the people who are going to work with him. But at the end of the day, do you see that would bring some sort of sanity to Europe, the way that Europe is behaving right now toward Russia, or even make them more independent in the future?
I'm not following you. What do you mean?
Because the conflict in Ukraine right now, they're totally in. Europeans, they're still in the game in Ukraine. They want to help Ukrainians. If Donald Trump decides to put an end to the conflict in Ukraine, is the European Union at the end of the day going to be more independent from the US foreign policy, or they're going to be, as we've seen so far, they're going to be totally connected with the US foreign policy? Or because they have some sort of they want to fight Donald Trump, let's put it that way.
Well, they don't. Okay, so they don't like Donald Trump, and that's been the case because Donald Trump's not part of their club. But you got a variety of dynamics at work. On the one hand, the current leadership, particularly in places like Germany, have completely surrendered themselves to the United States. You know, the U.S. plan all along, going back to Donald Trump, stop Nord Stream, make the Europeans buy natural gas from the United States, cost more, and keep the Russian cheaper gas out. This was all about money. This wasn't about stopping authoritarianism or the spread of communism. None of that. That's all nonsense. This was about trying to enrich the United States at the expense of the Europeans, and the Europeans went along with it. That's what's crazy, in particular in Germany. Well, a lot of the Germans now are awake and say, wait a minute, this is crazy. You've got other countries like Hungary, Slovakia, Serbia that are unwilling to buckle under to the EU bullying to take on Russia, because they're getting fuel from Russia, and they'd rather get the cheaper fuel than join on with this inevitable concept of a conflict. And then at the same time, you're seeing a rightward move, and this is what's crazy. It used to be that the right-wing elements in Europe were the ones most in favor of going to war with Russia. Now, ironically, it's the left wing, the so-called Green Party, these ideal, the Marxists. They're the ones that want to go after Russia. Gee, why would the Marxists want to go after Russia? Oh, yeah, that's right, because the Russians rejected Marxism and communism. So now you've got these right-wing governments starting to emerge. Austria looks like it's headed that way. You've just had a new candidate what's his name, Georgescu, in Romania. He came out of nowhere. He's considered, quote, a right-winger because he's an Orthodox Christian. But and says that reconciliation with Russia is in Romania's interests. So, I think Europe's going to commit its own suicide pact regardless of what happens with Donald Trump. But you've noticed, Macron got on the phone with Trump. Trudeau hopped in the car, had to go see Trump. So, and remember, David Lammy, that wretch of a foreign minister, he said the most despicable things about Donald Trump, and then Trump gets elected. Lammy couldn't buy enough chapstick for his lips to kiss all the Trump ass that he had to. Man, he was kissing it up one side down the other. Same with Starmer. So, these guys recognize that they don't have a lot of leverage. All they've got their history. In other words, Europeans are a bunch of has-beens. Face it. And guess what? The United States is on the path to join you.
Larry, the conflict in Ukraine is getting to the point that, in my opinion, is not anymore affordable for the United States to continue. And Donald Trump has a good chance of putting an end to the conflict. And we're going to see what he's going to do. But the conflict in the West Asia is much more complicated, in my opinion. Is that moment going to come to the conflict in the West Asia in terms of Israel? When would that moment come to Israel, and what Israel is doing that the United States says to Israel is not anymore affordable? The way that you're just going one after another conflict in the West Asia.
Well, let's be clear what problem does the United States face? The United States lacks a competent industrial base that can produce in sufficient quantities the weapons required to fight on a modern battlefield against a peer opponent. We just saw last week I think it was the commander of the U.S. military in the Pacific region. It used to be called PACOM. SINCPAC was, the acronym. But now it's SYNC Indo-PACOM. And SYNC Indo-PACOM said essentially, look, we got to stop pouring these weapons into Ukraine, because if we do, we're depleting what we need out here to face the Chinese. So what highlights right there that I think the Trump administration is more focused on trying to contain, if not attack, China. They see China as the big threat. And that, again, they so misunderstand Russia. In their mind, Russia is still this gas station with nuclear weapons masquerading as a country. Or they see, was it Mike Myers that played the character Dr. Evil? And he had this little dwarf mini-me. They see China as Dr. Evil and Russia as mini-me. Russia, true, is a smaller country population-wise. It doesn't have the number of factories. Well, actually, on a per capita basis, in terms of factory output per capita, Russia is probably comparable to China in that regard, and in many cases more advanced than China in a lot of its technology, particularly military technology. As an example, Russia was able to build its own commercial jet airliner out of Russian parts without having to rely upon a single part from a foreign supplier. China couldn't. It was relying upon Boeing, a U.S. supplier. So as the United States tries to shift to China, but also in the process ignoring Russia, what Russia represents militarily, economically, politically. Again, the West is just stupidity and arrogance. Dangerous combination is what we're seeing. But they fully, you listen to some of the neocons and some of the people that Trump has appointed. In their mind, they think that they can split Russia off from China and help Russia see that, the Chinese are the real threat. And I can see the Russians looking at the Americans going, man, you guys are doing too much cocaine. You're taking too many of those hallucinogenic drugs the Chinese are sending to you. Because that is crazy. That's not going to happen. Russia and China, the relationship they've forged over the course of the last 2 years is, it's a relationship forged in battle. They recognize they are at war with the West. The West is constantly attacking them, if not physically, verbally, and with sanctions. Russia's been sanctioned. The Chinese have been sanctioned. And China started to push back. It says, okay, hey, that antimony that we've been sending that is critical and essential for you to make your explosives? We're not sending it anymore. They're basically saying, hey, fuck off. You don't get any more. To the United States. So the United States says, now what do we do? The number of pharmaceuticals that the Americans take that are produced in China. If China cuts those off, you're going to have a lot of dead Americans. So, America's not, and under Trump, they keep thinking we're the guy in the poker room that's got the most dollars, and don't realize, no, we don't. Actually, we're walking in with, we may have $1,000, but the guy sitting across the table from us has 100,000.
Larry, what's so amazing about Donald Trump? He recently said that you have to use dollar. If you decide to not to use dollar, we're gonna punish you. At
we're
the
gonna
same time, he's
they'll be
trying
back.
to put sanctions.
We're gonna punish you. We're the Punisher. and the world's sick and tired of that. They've gone, no. You don't get to punish us anymore. That's why we don't want to use your dollar. We might use your dollar to wipe our ass, okay? But other than that, we don't want to use your dollar for that simple reason. We're tired of being bullied by you. Because if we use your dollar, you think that you get to tell us where we can go, who we can date, what we can eat, who we can see, where we can travel. No, we're not going to live that way anymore. We're going to find our way to get away from your dollar because we're sick of your interference. I think a growing number of countries in the world are waking up going, just like that iconic movie Network, which you probably have never seen, was made before your time. But at one point, this news anchor's on yelling people. He says, what I want you to do is go to your window and open the window and say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And what you saw are people start going to the window, and all across cities in the United States, people are opening their windows saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what's happening now in the global south. They have awakened and realized they're sick and tired of threats from the United States and bullying from the United States. They look for friendship and a partner, not a bully, not a boss.
Larry, do you think in Israel right now, Netanyahu is thinking that he's winning because of these conflicts just popping up in the region?
Yeah, I think he thinks he's winning. You ask some of his actual army commanders that have a brain, they'll tell you they're not. That's why they needed to stop that, quote, offensive in southern Lebanon, because they were losing too many soldiers, killed and wounded. And they were losing too much equipment. And yeah, they were killing a lot of civilians, man. But they were not stopping the Hezbollah fighters, and the Hezbollah inflicted serious damage on them. And so, Israel continues to kill civilians in Gaza, killing doctors, killing aid workers. And the world sits silent and says nothing.
Larry, how much of what's going on in the region is related to Gaza and distracting us, all of us, from what's going on in Gaza?
Well, Gaza was let's call it the fuse that has lit this bomb that's going off on a global basis. The humiliation and oppression that the Palestinian people had suffered under the Israelis for 75 years came to a head. I don't think, Hamas, I don't know who cooked up the Hamas attack on October 7th. But it was a brilliant raid. It accomplished quite a bit in exposing the weakness of many of the Israeli military. And Israel then used that as an excuse to try to...
Larry, the mic.
What happened?
Yeah, right now it's good. It's
okay.
Good because I lost.
Sorry. They used that as an excuse to try to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza. So it has, in the process, Israel is destroying itself. Israel used to be able to live on the reputation of being special in terms of humanitarian, that we care for others, that we're different. But now, they picked up, Matt Ho, I think he was on your show telling you about, they picked up a Palestinian girl who's Christian. She is a Christian. She's not a Muslim. She's not part of Hamas. And they put her in prison. A Christian teenager. The Zionists have imprisoned her because they hate Christians. The Zionists in Israel, they're just as bad as HTS is. They are a Jewish version of HTS, because the Zionist version, they hate Jews that they don't consider sufficiently devout and religious like they are. In the same way that HTS hates Muslims who don't share their same set of beliefs. It's the same thing. It's just, different window dressing.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
Have
Great pleasure as always.
have I cheered you up? Yeah. That's
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I make light of some of it, but this is so deadly serious and so damn dangerous. Because let me just close. I think one thing that could really change the dynamic is if Iran strikes Israel, as it's vowed to do, and makes good on promises. I know that Professor Syed Mohammed Mohandi he's indicated that this will be a much more devastating strike. If he's correct, then this could really change the dynamic in the region, because Israel would be faced actually with potential defeat. And then it's going to force a recalibration of everybody's thinking. And if all that coincides with a major breakthrough in Ukraine and collapse of the Ukrainian army, the world is entering a very dangerous stage of chaos. And the United States, this will be all on Trump, and Trump's not going to have any good answer for it. He can holler, he can make threats, but don't make threats that you can't deliver on. Word of advice.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Larry.
All right, my friend. We'll talk to you maybe later this week.
Yeah, on Friday. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.